you think about where we are in our unit, we are in taxonomy. We've talked about the general idea of taxonomy, of classifying organisms into groups, naming things. We then went on, talked about the general characteristics of each kingdom. And then we started working our way kingdom through kingdom. We talked about archaea, bacteria, protists, fungi. We just finished plants. We have one remaining kingdom, and that's animals. Kingdom Animalia. And so with animals, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. So for the other groups, we didn't really get into phylums and classes of them, but we will start to do that with animals. We'll break these into the smaller groups and talk about each one for a little bit. Because animals are things we have a lot of experience with. We come into contact with frequently. And so we'll learn a little bit more about those. So first of all, you guys told me this in our question of the day. We think about those three categories. Animals are multicellular, eukaryotic, and they are heterotrophs. So remind me what each of those words means. Multicellular. Abby?
It means that they have multiple cells making up their
Yes.
bodies.
One organism is composed of many cells working together. They are eukaryotic. What does that mean? Ella? No, not cell wall. Nucleus. They have a nucleus. They have other membrane-bound organelles. They have complex cells. Heterotrophic. Lily?
The other organism for nutrition.
They have to consume other organisms to get their energy. So you have to eat other things. The kingdom Animalia has a large variety of different body plans, different adaptations to survival. And we split them into kind of two broad categories. Vertebrates and invertebrates. Animals with and without a backbone or a spinal cord. Really a backbone is probably more accurate. What is that?
A frog.
Vertebrate or invertebrate? Vertebrate. A worm is an invertebrate. A lobster. Invertebrate. Polar bear puppy.
Oh my god, that's a thing. I want.
No, it's a polar bear. All right, let's do some more. Snakes. People get this one wrong. People get this wrong all the time. People often think snakes are invertebrates, but actually, snakes are vertebrates. In fact, almost their whole body, the majority of their skeleton is made up of what? Their spine, their backbone, their vertebrae, and their ribs. A crab, invertebrate or vertebrate? Invertebrate. They are hard and they have a shell, but it's not a backbone.
Oh, I have no idea.
What is that? Invertebrate. It's a starfish. An ant. People mistakenly say sometimes that mice have no bones. Have you ever heard anyone say that?
No.
They have they have bones just like any other mammal. I've heard people say that. Maybe because they could squeeze into small spaces. Salamander?
Oh, the salamander.
Bones.
Not if it has bones or not, does it have a backbone? Vertebrate. A slug. All right.
Vertebrate.
What is it?
Red panda.
Red panda.
Invertebrate.
Correct. Okay. So when we start talking about different classes of animals, one of the things we'll talk about is their symmetry. You guys have probably talked about symmetry in math class, right? Talk about. Did you do that this year? Okay. So you can talk about the symmetry of shapes. So symmetry means sort of the arrangement of parts, okay? And do they have a pattern to them? Some organisms don't. They don't have any pattern to their organization. So we say they are asymmetrical, they have asymmetry. Other organisms have bilateral symmetry. What does the prefix bi mean? Two. Lateral?
Good, not good.
No?
Cross.
Sides,
Yes.
like sides. So bilateral means two sides. It means you have things organized around one central line. We have two sides that are approximately equal to each other.
That's like us, right?
Like us. We have bilateral symmetry. You could draw, thinking about bilateral symmetry, if you could draw a line down the center of the organism and split it into two equal sides, and that's the only line you can draw, splitting it into equal parts, then it's bilateral symmetry. So what would radial symmetry be? Good shot. Yeah, there's multiple lines that will split it into equal parts. It's organized in a circular pattern, like spokes on a wheel. A flower, for example, even though it's not an animal, a flower has radial symmetry. You can draw several lines splitting it into equal parts, organized in a circular pattern. So, which type of symmetry does this bug have? Bilateral. This sea anemone. Radial. It's organized. Those tentacles come off from the center part like spokes on a wheel. That's radial symmetry. And this coral? Asymmetry. There's no pattern. A little more practice.
Okay.
What about this one, Mr. Whiskers? Bilateral. You can draw a line. If you cut Mr. Whiskers in half, which I would not suggest you do, you would have two equal halves. How about this spider? Bilateral. There's only one line right down the middle that would split it into two equal halves. Now this isn't an animal, but we're still going to talk about it. This amoeba. What is its symmetry? Asymmetry. Doesn't have any pattern. How about this sea urchin? Radial symmetry. Those spines are organized in a circular pattern. This is something we're going to look at in class. It's a flatworm. It's called planaria. It has bilateral symmetry. How about this horseshoe crab? What's this? What is that?
It's a
Sand
dollar.
Sand dollar.
What is the actual, like?
We'll talk about it today.
I have one.
And what?
Me too. Is it alive?
Yep. That's radial symmetry. So is that pretty clear, the differences? All right, so we're going to talk about our different groups, starting with invertebrates. So if I were to ask you to think of an animal in your head, I would say for the vast majority of you, you're thinking of a vertebrate animal.
No.
Most people are not thinking of invertebrates. But actually, invertebrates are 95% of all identified animals on Earth. They're invertebrates. These are animals without a backbone or a spinal column. And there's a huge variety of invertebrates. They range from very, very simple things, like a sponge, to much more complex organisms, an octopus or a crab. And so we'll talk about the different groups. We're going to go through, actually, for the most part, phylum by phylum, and talk about some of these invertebrates and talk about adaptations they have and characteristics they have. Talk about what some examples you may be familiar with. So let's start off with the simplest of animals, phylum Porifera. sponges. So you've seen these sorts of things before, probably at like, Bath and Body Works or somewhere. This was alive. This is an animal. Was an animal. It's dead now. Okay. But a natural sponge, okay, is the simplest of animals, and it has asymmetry. There's no real pattern to it. So where did this come from?
The ocean.
It came from the ocean. Sponges, porifera, generally attach themselves to some surface in the ocean and stay there. How do they eat them? They're heterotrophs, like all animals.
They suck it up.
Yes?
They filter water through themselves.
Yeah, they suck water in through all these openings. In fact, porifera, pores mean holes. So they suck in water, and as the water is moving through their exoskeleton, they filter out little bits of organic matter, little bits of plants and animals that are in that ocean water, and that's what they use for their energy. So we call those things filter feeders. There are many invertebrates which are filter feeders, and we'll talk about some more today. And so examples are these sponges. Sponges are really interesting. They come in a huge variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some are, shaped like this, spherical sort of thing with a hole in the middle. Some are abnormally shaped. They vary quite a bit. Okay, some are tubes. So that's the simplest. This has no, so if you remember, the organization of living things. The basic unit of life is what? The cell. In some organisms, a bunch of cells work together and form tissues. A bunch of tissues work together, they form organs. This sponge doesn't have any tissues, doesn't have any organs, doesn't have any organ systems. It's basically just a collection of individual cells.
Is it like spongy?
Now it's a little bit. If you put it in water, it would absorb a lot of that water. It's because there's all those openings and holes and tunnels through it is why it can absorb a lot of water. All right, cnidarians. The C is silent. Cnidarians. Cnidarians include things you're probably familiar with, like jellyfish, coral. One we'll look at in class, hydra, sea anemones. So I'll pass around. Okay, I'll pass around the sponge. Just look at it. Don't. So I'm going to pass around a bunch of different things today. Just be careful with them. Don't shake them around, swish them around, squeeze them. Lots of these are pretty delicate. So cnidarians.
Lobster shell?
Hold on. We'll go one at a time. You'll see all this stuff, so I'll pass this. Or no, I won't.
There's a little squid.
I will pass around. Where was it? I have cnidarian here. I guess. I thought I had. Yes. It'll just get soft and absorb it. All right, passing around a coral. So coral are. So what am I holding? So this is dead, obviously.
Shell?
Yeah, this is sort of, coral are organisms. They live in the oceans. They attach to a surface.
Wait, actually, let me see it again.
They have living parts
That's gross.
that grow, and they make this shell of calcium carbonate. And even after the coral have died off, the skeleton of it remains. So that's what you're seeing. Coral are extremely important to ecosystems. Coral are some of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. However, they are suffering pretty badly. Do you know why?
Because pollution.
Well, kind of.
Oh, coral reef skin damage or whatever?
Because of a specific type of pollution.
It feels like oil.
No, so it's not a toxic substance, it's actually a substance many living things need. Carbon dioxide being released by the burning of fossil fuels is making our oceans warmer, but also more acidic. And many coral cannot tolerate those conditions, and so they are dying off. Okay? And there's a serious problem with the Earth's coral reefs. Many of these have stinging cells. This is a jellyfish. So a jellyfish is a cnidarian. It has tentacles, which on those tentacles are these specialized stinging cells called nematocysts. These nematocysts are basically like a little tiny harpoon in the tentacle of the jellyfish that shoots into its prey, immobilizes it so that the cnidarian can then consume its prey. So if you've anyone ever been stung by a jellyfish?
My mom did.
Okay. So jellyfish basically are floating through the ocean, swimming through the ocean. Some have very, very long tentacles, some have short tentacles. But if those tentacles release those nematocysts, if they come near you when you're swimming, and a tentacle comes into contact with your skin, some of those nematocysts can be ejected into your skin, and they secrete, I should say, a toxin in your skin. And in humans, usually it just hurts really bad. But in small organisms they're going to eat, it actually kills them. There are lethal jellyfish to humans. Yeah, I'm going to show you a quick video about those. So, do you know what people say you should do if you're stung by a jellyfish?
Pee.
Somebody should pee on it. So,
That happened to my mom.
all right, let me tell you this. If that ever happened, you just let somebody pee on you for no reason, because it doesn't actually work.
Yep.
Do you know what they keep at lifeguard stations in areas where there's lots of jellyfish?
Bottles of pee. You're right.
No. And this said it doesn't work.
So you dump in the ocean.
A mild acid like vinegar. If you are ever really stung by a jellyfish, the proper treatment is, first of all, the area where it came into contact with your skin, you should like scrape it with like a piece of plastic or a credit card, because usually those nematocysts are embedded in your skin. Even though the jellyfish is gone, they're still stuck to your skin. So you kind of scrape them off with something, and then you spray with a mild acid like vinegar or something like that, and then that will help take some of the sting away. Also, sea anemones are cnidarians. They have stinging cells. However, they have established a symbiotic relationship with clownfish, where the clownfish are not affected by these stinging cells. Here's some anemones. And there's a huge variety of,
Aren't there some?
of types of cnidarians. Some jellyfish produce their own light, they're bioluminescent, especially ones that live deep in the oceans. Some produce intense toxins that can kill people. So there's a huge variety. This is the one we're going to look at in class, I would say probably next week. This is a hydra. It's a small protist that lives in fresh water. Not protist, I'm sorry. A small cnidarian that lives in fresh water. Alan, you have a question?
Aren't there like some jellyfish that are like ridiculously big?
Yeah, there's giant jellyfish, bigger than a person. There's also teeny tiny little ones. There's a huge variety. Like when we go to South Carolina, usually if you've ever been to like Myrtle Beach, they wash up all the time on the beach. Those are bullseye jellyfish, usually the ones I see in South Carolina.
I was canoeing on a lake. I forget where it was. It was somewhere not in New York. And there was these jellyfish that were like in the lake, and they had adapted to the like fresh water, so they lost their like stinging capabilities. So you could just like pick them up.
Oh, yeah,
They're
yeah,
moon
some-
jellyfish.
Yeah.
They
What
have,
are they
like,
called?
These weird moon jellyfish. They
No.
have these weird like white patterns on them that look like crescents. That's why they call them.
Oh.
Some of them have like one that goes all the way around. And some have like 4 or 5.
That's interesting. Alice?
I've read this once or twice, but is there really a jellyfish that can kind of turn itself back into like when it's first born?
I don't know. Not
Yes,
sure about
Leo
that.
Fountain, if you-
So a lot of these cnidarians go through 2 life stages. Maybe that's what you're talking about. they can form what's called the medusa stage, which is what you think of as a jellyfish, or a stage in which they're like anchored to the ground, a polyp stage, and they might go through those different stages. But I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to there, Alex. All right, let me show you this quick video. This is about the box jellyfish.
Clam, then some.
All right, so the next phylum, so that's Cnidarian. The next phylum is called Echinodermata. And Echinodermata, the name, it means spiny skin, like a dermatologist is a doctor that helps people with skin problems. Okay, spiny skin. And Echinodermata includes some things you're probably familiar with. It includes starfish. Okay, these have an exoskeleton. That's what's left here. The living parts are dead. They have little tube feet that come out of these grooves on the bottom to help them move around. So that's one example. They have one opening where they take in food, digest it, and then the waste comes out the same opening. That's something we use to classify lots of organisms. Other examples, sand dollars. So sand dollars, these were also alive. So you may have seen these like a shell store, found them on the beach. They have a living portion. What's left is, again, the shell that they make. They move around. They are also filter feeders. A sea urchin is an echinoderm. No, that's the last one. And the sea urchin has those spikes. Sometimes they have toxins as well, depending on the species. But those are all examples of echinoderms. So write those examples down, and I think a lot of people miss that. So sea stars, sand dollars, sea urchins. You can actually see, so people don't really think about the sand dollar actually moving. This is just a little time-lapse video that shows the sand dollar is like a little Roomba vacuum, one of those little robot vacuums. It sort of moves around the surface of the sand.